You are now watching Believe. Do you believe?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of True to the Cougs. My name is Jamey Vinnick. With me is Marcus Trufant. We are here with True to the Cougs, powered by Believe Network. Marcus, how's it going?
Going pretty good, my man. Pretty good. How about yourself?
I am doing well. Just want to, before we start, apologize if I sound super congested. It's because I am super congested. Picked up a little cold down in Los Angeles last weekend, but besides that, feeling all right.
Tell me about the trip, man. You just can't throw in there. I was down in Los Angeles. Tell me about the trip. Did you fly? Was it a road trip? Give me some of the details, bro.
So flew down there on Thursday.
Okay.
Stayed at a hotel about 4 miles from the stadium. I used to like going to Los Angeles when I was younger because I didn't have to deal with the traffic or the travel. I was 12 years old, 13 years old. My parents did all that. After doing it as an adult, not a fan. It is a headache. I will put it like that. I landed, 3:30, my flight landed. Got to my hotel right about 7 because of all the traffic, getting to the rental car place and getting the rental car and it was crazy. I actually went to a concert, a Slipknot concert, for those unaware and don't follow me on Twitter, big time metalhead. So I went to go see Slipknot, Ice Nine Kills, and Crown the Empire, a couple of my favorite bands. And myself and Wazoo's other primary beat writer, Colton Clark, who writes for The Spokesman, we drove up to Irvine for the concert, 40 miles, and it took us an hour and 45 minutes.
Okay.
40 miles from Pullman? I do that in 30 minutes.
Right.
There's no cops listening. But
Right.
I just, I think being in Pullman for so long has made me appreciate, the 5-minute commutes. We practice usually ends at 8:30 for us to do post-practice interviews. I'm out of bed at about 8:10, 8:15, and I'm there in 5 minutes. The weather was nice. I still love California.
Gotcha.
But, it just, I don't know. I grew up 20 minutes from Seattle, but I've kind of become a small town guy. So, the Coliseum was amazing.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, tell me about the Coliseum. It's been a long time since I've been there. So, yeah.
It is without question the coolest place I've covered a game. It's just, I walked in and it's like, wow. You don't realize how big it is until you get in there. And I can only imagine what it's like when you're on the field rather than sitting in the press box. But, it's an interesting environment. They don't sell out, which to me is wild. And it'll be interesting to see how that works in the Big Ten when you can't sell at 77,000. Well, Michigan's doing that with 110 every week.
Mm-hmm.
They've got this DJ, and he's like hyping up the crowd throughout the game. And I'm not going to lie, it's a little cringy. It's, he's trying to be all cool and like hip. And it's like, nah, this is a little cringy. The thing that I always, joke about with SC is SC still tries to act like they are this bunch of big, bad inner city, like heart of LA type guys. And that's just not really what they are anymore. It's not like in the, they try. I overheard someone say they act like they're, 1991 Miami.
Okay.
But, they're a great football team. I just thought that was interesting. It's like, it's like
a bunch of college kids is what you're trying to say.
Yeah,
man.
exactly.
No real gangbangers out there. There ain't no real bangers out there.
It felt like, we might have like a, festival or a football game. Yeah, it wasn't a big fan of the DJ. Now, I'm the first person to just absolutely put Wazoo's game day experience on blast. So I can't be too critical of someone else's, but yeah, I heard about the DJ and I walk in and this guy's, I'm just like, what is going on? Are we playing a football game or not?
What music was he playing? Like,
he was playing like rap. Rap.
All right. Okay.
Yeah,
but it really didn't fit, I guess, the energy of the team or.
It might have. I don't know the players. That maybe is their energy. I will say personally, I did not know the music he was playing. It was a lot of newer rap. I'm much more on the old school rap. I'm the
same way.
I'm 12, 13 years old in like 2008. So that's like the early Drake, Lil Wayne, Eminem, of course. And then I'll even go back a little bit to like Nas and Tupac. But
Jamey, I see.
Yeah, I can go back a little. Hey, Illmatic, Nas, favorite rap album of all time. But this was, I think, a lot of the newer rap. I would have been okay if he was playing like some Snoop or some Dr. Dre, some California Love. But this was all like modern stuff. I'm like, man, this isn't my vibe.
Nah, not so much. But not the mumble rap.
Yeah, but no, the Coliseum was great. It is a really cool stadium and a cool environment. Obviously, the game didn't go all that well, but no, I'm glad I got to do it because Washington State's not going to be back there by the time they would circle around to SC again. They'll be in the Big Ten, and I don't think the teams are going to be playing a non-conference game. So I'm glad I did it, but yeah, I had I had some interesting opinions on the whole game day experience with the DJ. I was pretty entertained by it, but I mean, credit to that guy. He's talking for like 6 hours on a microphone. His voice must be getting pretty tired because he's doing that like hours before the game, and then he
earning his paycheck, huh?
I guess. And I'll give him credit. You know, I think he was doing some mixing of some songs, and those were pretty good. So I'll give him credit. I don't want to just be a total hater. I'm more of a traditionalist that, you know, you go and you play the game of football. It doesn't need to be a whole, you know, concert.
Right. I feel you.
But let's talk about the game a little bit. Washington State falling 30-14 against number 6 USC. The last time they'll play in the Coliseum most likely might be the last time they play USC. I don't think they play them next year. If they do, it would be in Pullman. It was one of those games. I don't think the score represents the closeness of the game, but I also think Washington State did not play a very good game. I
would agree with that, man. From my perspective or from my view, it didn't feel like Washington State really got comfortable, right? That they would kind of be on this 2 steps forward, kind of 2 steps back type of thing. That the offense was out there, and they had some good plays, man, and they did some good stuff. But then, and then you get like a loss of 5, or you try this running play, and the offensive line is kind of like a jailbreak at certain times. So just things, it was like a little too much back and forth, and like I said, never really got comfortable, never found their footing. And SC kind of just did what they do.
I think for Washington State and any team like them to beat USC, I don't want to say they have to play perfect, but they have to play near perfect. And to the Cougars' credit, they didn't turn the ball over. That was a big factor. That was a big must.
Huge,
but
right.
At the end of the day, if you comes down to a battle of talent, USC is going to win the talent battle against 120 some teams in the country. And the only ones they aren't going to win the talent battle are in Columbus, Ohio, or the SEC. I mean, that just is what it is. And I think USC's talent kind of rose to the top. USC's offense, I don't think that played that good of a game. I mean, Caleb Williams was under 60% passing.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't turn it over, but I think he was 15-29. Travis Dye did have a good game on the ground. Jordan Addison didn't do a whole lot. And they only scored 30 points. So I think the Coug defense played a good game. But USC's defense, they were really strong, and it just wasn't a very crisp game from the Washington State offense. Missed blocks, drops. You have to be better. You have to be better than what they did to beat USC.
All around the board, man. And just like you said, playing against a team like SC that doesn't necessarily have to play their best brand of football in every game because they got so many weapons. They got so many guys out there that can go, right? And that's offense and defense. So the game for the Cougs, the Cougar defense, I think it was that running game. And you talk about Dye, and what did he have? He had 28 for 149, an average of 5.3. I thought that was the tail of the game, especially in the second half. They kind of just wore the defense down, man, and kind of beat them up. I mean, there's guys walking around with hands on their hips. Guys are tired. So a tough game like that, of course, you're going down to play in enemy territory. It can be drained physically. You can be drained, of course, on the mental side as well. So it was just a tough game for the Cougs, but definitely tough for the defense.
I can't remember who said this a couple of years ago. I can't remember if it was a player or just a friend or a fan or media member, but said Washington State versus USC. If Wazoo is at 100%, USC is at 70%. That is how Wazoo wins that game. If it's both teams at 100%, USC wins. If the teams play the similar, like if USC plays a game this well and Wazoo plays it the same amount of wellness, I guess I'm kind of just spitballing here, but then USC is going to win. Wazoo has to outplay USC to make up for the talent differential, because that's at the end of the day, you can scheme all you want, you can make all the plays, but USC, and there are cases where this is false, but 9 times out of 10, USC is going to have the superior talent. And I think for Washington State to win, it has to be superior coaching and superior performance. And I thought Wazoo coaching, their game plans were very good. I think the coaches did their job. I just don't think the execution was there. I think if you look at the way Wazoo played, that's just not going to be enough to beat USC. And it wasn't a terrible game. Wazoo probably beats a lot of teams with that level of play. I mean, but USC is just not one of those teams. I mean, that's just when you're number 6 in the country and you've got Lincoln Riley and just talent after talent after talent, you have to play near perfect to beat those teams. It's the same way you have to beat an Alabama or a Georgia. The talent, you're not going to be more talented than them. So you're going to have to outcoach them, outwork them, outplay them. And I think if you look at the last time Wazoo beat USC, Mike Leach outcoached Clay Helton. Wazoo outplayed USC. Wazoo was not the more talented team in that game. If you look at, guys who went to the league or guys who did this or that,
right?
But they had the game plan. They had the execution.
Right. I would say as well that you got to have some freaky kind of fluke things happen. That could be special teams, or that could be a sack, fumble, or you could get an interception to the house, or pick six, of course, from your linebackers and stuff like that, like we saw a couple games ago. But stuff like that has to happen, and just to give you a boost, because just like you said, Jamey, it's hard to line up and be like, okay, I'm gonna go guy for guy against a team like SC. It's tough, very tough to do.
I mean, I think even if you look back to your days, I mean, the 2002 game against USC at home, kind of one of the most iconic wins. I mean, that Wazoo team was awesome. I mean, that was a tremendous Cougar team that won the Pac-12 and went 10-3. But you go look at that USC roster and the amount of guys that were in the NFL on that team. I mean, you start with Palmer and then Leinart, and you look at Mike Williams and Dominique Byrd and Kerry Colbert and Justin Fargas. That's just on offense. But, it came down to game plan, execution, coaching, and obviously one hell of a Washington State team that year.
Right.
I don't think we can talk about this game without discussing the officiating. And we'll preface with this. Washington State did not lose this game because of the refs. This is not, refs decided the game. That said, the officiating was a factor in this game, and I think it's hard to say otherwise. When Washington State, who entered the game with 23 penalties in 5 games, they had never taken more than 5 in a game. Suddenly they get called for 7 in the first half and 11 total.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to say rigged, or you don't want to say the fix is in, but I'm not saying that, but it does make you raise your eyebrows. How does a team that has not committed penalties this year, and some of those were undisciplined, offsides, false starts, but how does a team that has not committed penalties, all of a sudden you match up against the team who everyone knows is the baby of the conference, even with them leaving, they're the best chance at the playoff this year, and suddenly, there's 11 whistles, and Armani Marsh gets called for a pass interference in which she's basically getting manhandled by the USC tight end, and a Wazoo offensive lineman gets ejected for targeting when he blocks a guy with his hands. And by the way, for those unaware, Grant Stevens, that lineman, the suspension was upheld. He can't play in the first half.
Oh, really? Man.
Yeah. Yep. You look at the fact that Brennan Jackson's getting held every time he's coming off the line. Every time it seemed like Wazoo had a big play, well, here comes a flag. Shaw Smith-Wade has what seems to be a huge pick. No, it's defensive holding.
Right.
Jackson on one play is getting absolutely, is it a sleeper hold off the right side, but somehow we see Shaw Smith-Wade with a face mask on the other side of the field. It makes you wonder, what exactly are we looking at here, guys? So, again, Washington State lost this game because USC played better and is the better team. The officials did impact this game.
I would agree, Jamey, but I would disagree at the same time, right? I know that we don't place blame on the refs, and I know we're not saying that we lost because of the referees, but good teams find a way, right? You have to overcome this. Of course, it looked bad, man. It felt terrible as fans, but as far as being a guy on the field, you have to find a way, especially like on a play like the targeting play. The way that football is played now, you can't even get close to those type of plays. If you got to put your hands up, if you just got to be a wall, you can't jack guys up, right? They don't even do that kind of stuff on ESPN anymore. There was a show that was called segment called Jacked Up, and they used to celebrate that. They used to talk about all this stuff. But now with all the concussion stuff and everything, it's people looking from everywhere. And you talk about sponsorship dollars, et cetera, et cetera. So the referees have a job to do. Just on that part from player safety, but like the interceptions and the hands and the PI and all that kind of stuff, that's tough play. That's very tough play. You have to find a way to try to get creative, try to get sneaky, but plays like that are tough, man. And a lot of those plays, it can be lopsided, and we felt like they missed a lot of Wazoo calls, but we still had some opportunities. And if the Cougs would have made some of those plays and they would have got off the field, they would have got rid of some of those sacks, they would have stopped some of those long runs from die, then it's a different type of game. And you catch some of those balls that we dropped, it's still a pretty close game. And you said it earlier, Jamie, it didn't feel like that type of game as far as what the score dictated. So it's hard to blame it on the refs. I want to do it too, man. I want to go out, man, throw some tomatoes at the refs and do it like that. But just understanding the other side of it, man, and being in games myself to where, okay, the refs ain't really doing anything, but how do we find a way to win?
Right. If it's a 3-point loss, I think it's a bigger discussion. Wazoo lost by 16. Officials are not changing a 16-point game from a loss to a win. It's just not happening. Maybe if there's a call or two that goes the other way, maybe it's a few points closer. The one in particular on when Marsh gets called for PI, that right there is a field goal. So you can make that, but there was not the refs were not worth 16 points in this game. Right. And the gripe I have with the targeting, though, and I get the player safety, and that's going to get called. My question is, and this is a true question, if that's flipped, are they tossing a USC starting offensive lineman out of a game when they play Utah next week? Is he missing the first half of the Utah game when they're their only chance still for a playoff bid? I want to say yes. I want to believe that they would call it the same way. Right. I have a tough time believing that if Andrew Voorhees, their standout guard, hits Brennan Jackson there, that Andrew Voorhees is ejected. It's hard for me to kind of buy into that when I don't know, man. Maybe
a lot of eyes on the referees too. A lot of eyes on the referees, and this player safety thing is huge. So just the fact that it looks bad and a guy goes down and he kind of grabs his head, right? The refs are almost in a spot, right? Because the commentators are going to talk about it. They're going to play the highlight and all this kind of stuff, man. And it's money being exchanged, there's sponsorship, and there's deals. We could talk about the NCAA and all the money they make and all this kind of stuff. So they have to do certain things. I'm not saying that the refs are getting the green handshake, right? I'm just saying that they have probably put an over emphasis on that part of the game.
I think
it
you're
doesn't help.
right.
Well, it helps the players because they want to protect the players, but if they're going to err on the side of caution on that play every single time, I believe so.
Bigger frustration with refs. Coug game, Seahawk game, because it was bad for the Seahawks too. Yeah.
Are you talking about
yesterday? We're recording Monday, so Sunday against the Saints.
Well, yeah. So I think it was the same type of situation. The Seahawks did not play well enough to make this a referee thing, right? The Hawks had several opportunities to get stops, to do certain things, man, and they let Taysom Hill kind of just do his thing, man, and run around and pretty much be all world, right? And you know what's coming. They lined up in the heavy set, man. They bring in extra tight ends, whatever they want to do. They put him back there in the Wildcat, and he just runs crazy, and he throws a touchdown pass. I know he usually doesn't do that, but makes it tough, man. And the offense, they played pretty good, man, but it's just hard to win when you can't get stops on defense, and your defense is out there all day, all night. It makes it really tough, and they know it, man. Pretty much all the guys on defense, from all the press conferences I heard, they're talking about, man, we just got to find a way to make it happen. There's nothing that's crazy. It's not like they're blowing coverages, but they just need to find a way to make it happen. And I know they're tired of talking about it, but they got to get over that hump, and they got to find a way to get it done.
We won't turn this into a Seahawk podcast, but I do have to ask real quick. My brother thinks that Tariq Woolen is the greatest cornerback that has ever lived in the history of the world. I mean, he's very good. But what have you seen from him? Just real quick.
Tariq, aka T Woo is what we call him on this side. He is doing his thing, man. And I'm gonna sign up for that. I'm not gonna sign him up too early that he's the greatest player in the world, but he's making a damn good run, and he's making plays that veteran guys that are comfortable and the game has slowed down. He's making those type of plays. So a big shout out to T Woo.
My brother hasn't quite gotten to that point yet, but he really likes him. So I had to ask. Right. Maybe we'll end up being the third best corner in Seahawk history behind Marcus Trufant and Richard Sherman.
maybe. Yeah, I like him though. He's playing some really good ball, man.
I haven't had a chance to watch a lot just with travel and other games, but what I've seen, I've been very impressed with as well. And he's a bright spot on a not so bright defense. But moving on actually the last thing I want to touch on just in regards to this past weekend. Jake Dicker did give us some unfortunate news earlier. Renard Bell and Nakia Watson will both be out a while. Did not specify a time frame, but those will be some pretty big losses at inside receiver and running back. Although Jalen Jenkins coming off 130 yards against USC, he will likely be the feature back. But Armani Marsh seems to be good to go. He also exited with an injury. Moving on to Oregon State. Washington State is in Corvallis this week, 6:00 start. On the Pac-12 network to take on the Beavs. Oregon State is also 4-2. This has been a Washington State dominated series lately, 8 straight over Oregon State, but the Beavs are a very different team at home, very good team at home. And, you know, they're a little different than they maybe were a couple years ago. They can really run the ball.
Yeah, man. And the thing about the Cougs going down there, man, to play against a motivated team, and that a team that's really good on defense at home, that can get the crowd involved. That gets the energy involved. And you talk about momentum. I know a lot of guys that talk sports, they don't so much like to talk about momentum because that just means you're doing things right. So, but as far as from the Cougs way of thinking, they're coming in the enemy territory, and the defense is playing well. They're running around crazy. They're making stuff happen. They're getting sacks. They're getting turnovers. If that's the case, it's going to be tough for the Cougs in general because the way their offense is set up and the way the offense has been playing, yeah, they're putting up a lot of yards. They had some good runs today, but the 2 steps forward, 2 steps back thing is going to be very tough to come in and dominate teams. You got to put teams away, and you really got to make things happen. So I want to see the Cougs step up on offense. I know that sounds odd, but I want to see them finish teams. I want to see them put their foot on people's necks and really make it happen.
I mean, it would be nice for a solid 50-point win, but
exactly.
You know, the one thing that's interesting about Oregon State that obviously is not true about USC is I don't want to call them one-dimensional, but they're pretty one-dimensional. They can't really throw the ball. Excuse me. I think it's 9 touchdowns at 10 picks this year. They've got quarterback injuries. I mean, this is a team where if you take away the run, you've got a really good chance of winning. And then defensively, it's almost the opposite. They are great against the pass, really good secondary, and a solid run defense. And it kind of feels like another one of those games where obviously you'd love to see the offense get going, but it feels like one of those 24-20 games or 21-17. It just feels like another chance that you're going to get 2 teams that just aren't maybe going to score a ton of points.
Right. I would like to see the defense kind of get some get back as well, man. Get some turnovers, man, get some sacks, and let the big guys up front, go to work. Because to be honest, I felt like they got pushed around a little bit against SC, man. Just looking back at some of those plays, the guys in the middle, the guys like Henley, it's hard for them to make the plays when you got the guys up front and they're kind of 2-gapping, right? I know they want to hold guys up and you can let the linebackers run, but it seemed like the lineman was able to get up to the second level and kind of create those natural creases, right? And that's why Dye was able to get up the field, man, and look so smooth and not get touched until he's in the secondary. And that's a bad day for defensive backs. We hate when running backs are running full speed. It can come to us, because that's when you get shoulder surgery after the season and you get banged up and you get concussions and you're getting ran over. So I would like to see the big boys up front that come into Oregon State, man, and have a good day.
One thing I think it's with defensive tackles, they're not the stat stuffers by any means. I mean, a lot of what they do is just clogging lanes.
Right.
When you have 4 total tackles from your defensive tackles, that does not indicate a great day. And that's how many they had against USC. I think and again, it's not all about that, but I think when you put 2 and 2 together, maybe not the best day for the defensive tackles. I think the other factor in this game is it's going to be kind of a weird one. Research Stadium isn't full capacity right now because of remodeling. So it's just going to be kind of an odd environment.
Yeah, man. And to be honest, I think that I don't know who that favors, though. I think that may favor the home team still, but I think the Cougs need to focus on themselves and to worry about themselves. I know the atmosphere is going to be the atmosphere. It's going to be weird. It's going to be uncomfortable, and they're doing their renovations, I guess, or whatever. But they need to focus on being consistent. And I keep going back to the offense. The offense is great. Cam Ward has been doing some unbelievable stuff and making all these crazy plays to extend plays and do a bunch of different stuff, but you can't come back on the next play and have a loss of 7, right? You got to keep pushing that thing down the field. And once again, finish drives, finish teams, and put points on the board. It just can't be a game full of highlights and then you still lose.
What's the biggest key to this game, in your opinion?
I think it's the defense, making sure that they keep Oregon State one-dimensional, like you said. If they can come in and clog the run up, man, and have a field day, and they can run around and they can make them pass, and we can get interceptions, and we could score for the offense, I think that's where the Cougs have definitely have the advantage.
Does Washington State have to change anything offensively that Grant Stevens is out the first half and that you're without Watson and Bell? Or do you trust what you're doing? From what Dickert said, they're going to plug in Falili Fa'amo. Haven't decided yet. Doesn't sound like if he's going to play guard or tackle. Or do you just have to stick with what you know and not start to make these drastic changes?
I think we stick with what we know. I know we saw from Jenkins that he can run and he can do his thing. So I don't think we change the calls and stuff like that. It's a different style of running, of course, because he's a lot smaller, but I think you go for what you know, man, and you keep the same thing going, but you execute better, right? I know you got guys that usually don't get as much playing time, but it's the next man up, and you got to show up and you got to make plays and you got to make it happen. And I think they should be able to take a step forward. I think they should be motivated in this game on offense to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I think, I'll just speak for, maybe the biggest factor I think overall is I think it's going to come down to the chum of the line. I think it's going to come down to, the big boys in kind of in the middle, just battling and just, who wins the trenches. That's what Dickert said. The trenches determine this game. So what's your score prediction?
You said you like a low scoring game, man. I'm looking for the Coug offense to show up, man. I think they should be a little pissed off from the SC game, and you could call it referees, you could call it whatever you want to call it. And I think guys that are going to be able to get opportunities that normally don't play are going to be really motivated. So I'm looking for maybe keep Oregon State down low, maybe like a 30-9, man. I want to see the defense show up. Man. I want to see them step up, but I want to see the Coug offense be efficient and not get too crazy, too pass happy or whatever, but stay consistent, stay with what they do, and the defense just put up a wall and make it happen.
30-9. You better hope Beavers don't find this. They're going to let you know if that's not what happens.
Hey, but they can tell them I said it.
I got 24-20 Wazoo. Reminds me of a story last year. I do an article every week with Will Dirting for CougFan.com. And
Dirty. Yeah.
Yeah. Will picked the Cougs, I think, like 20-17. And I picked 17-14 Oregon State. And Oregon State fans were livid. How can these guys think we're not going to score? And they scored 24 points. And I'm like, I picked you guys to win. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
And I remember there was one comment that one of their fans made. It's like, it was some joke about Wazoo academics. Oh, can they even count to that many points? And I remember someone took that and quoted it. It might have even been me and tweeted, well, we can count to 8. And that's how many straight years Washington State's beaten Oregon State. So
yeah, I like that.
I got love for the Beavers. I got nothing against Oregon State. I feel like they're kind of Washington State has kind of a kindred spirit with them as kind of the state schools and the undervalued schools. But I just thought that was funny last year.
I would agree.
Moving to our next segment, and we don't want to harp on the officiating too much, but I do have to ask. You were involved in maybe the most controversially officiated game in NFL history. Maybe that's a little much, but I hate to bring up Super Bowl 40, but I'll bring up Super Bowl 40. The officiating, for those unaware, the Steelers and Seahawks played in that Super Bowl in 2006. Pittsburgh won 24-10 in a game in which the officiating was horrendous, and it very much favored Pittsburgh. There was Ben Roethlisberger was given a touchdown when he was down and then moved the ball. There was a just ridiculous holding on Sean Locklear, which my dad swears by to this day. He says, I always bring up the calls and don't forget the holding on Locklear was the worst one. And then I think it was Matt Hasselbeck got called for a chop block while making a tackle.
And that was before they were even making those calls. It was an interception or something like that. I can't even remember what happened.
And the official came out and apologized. So it wasn't like we're just blowing. What do you remember from that? And just how frustrating was that as a player when you look back and you feel like you got, in a way, robbed? It
was crazy frustrating, man. It was very frustrating. Just the calls, man. Just as soon as we would make a play or as soon as we would get a breath of fresh air, we're drowning. We're just fighting, man. We're trying to hang on. And the calls just kept coming, man. And I think we had a offensive pass interference. I think it might have been Darrell Jackson scored a touchdown. They took that away. I believe it was the same thing with Jeremy Stevens, maybe on a touchdown. So just at every turn, it was something there. But to be honest, man, it was similar to the Cool game because we did not execute very well in that game. We didn't play very well in that game. Lots of mistakes, man, and guys were hurt. People were going down, and the next man had to step up. You get if you get a bunch of blown coverages, man. I never throw my safety under the bus, but I'm gonna do it because I'm old and retired. It came down on a play action. He bit on the fake. A double pass, they pass it to Randall L, and then he throws it to Hines Ward, and I'm in the video. I'm chasing in slow motion, and they played that for all the offseason. They're still playing it now, as a matter of fact.
I saw it a couple weeks ago.
It's just one of those things, man. In a game like that, you have to make sure you execute, and you have to not give the refs the opportunity to make those close calls. You have to dominate in those situations, like being in the end zone. You got to be wide open. You got to be hands off. If you're going to make tackles, if you're going to do stuff, you got to do it in a way to where there's no guesswork in there. You got to find a way to make it happen. And we didn't do that in that game. Yes, the refs came back, I believe, that offseason and was like, yeah, you guys, we're sorry. We blew some of those calls. We're not going to change the outcome of the game and nothing changes, but we just want to put salt in the wound, and we want to come to your meeting in the morning and let you know that we apologize. I get the gesture, but too little, too late.
You guys are, I was 8 years old, but 9 years old and down. I mean, if I remember correctly, down Kenny Hamlin, he'd gotten into that altercation at the bar. Right. A little shorthand. Again, my dad and I have always said about that game is the calls were terrible, but you mentioned the Randall L. Ward play and the big Willie Parker run. So, hey, I'm just saying, Ben Roethlisberger went 9 of 21 with 2 picks. Secondary did their job.
I'll take that. I will take that. And that was Ben. Yeah. To be honest, it was an overall pretty nasty game. So the Steelers didn't play well. The rest, of course, didn't play well. And then we didn't play well. So it was a nasty Super Bowl. It was ugly. The weather was nasty in Detroit. Of course, we played in the stadium, but it was snowing outside. It was ugly. you wanted to go hang out and do stuff for the Super Bowl. It really wasn't even cracking like that in the city. Just a nasty time. Still a great experience because we went to the Super Bowl, but it was not like that.
I think I said 24-10 when we started this, 21-10, my mistake. But no, I just remember, I was young. I remember the more recent Super Bowls far better, but I remember being in disbelief at some of the calls. Moving on to the next segment as we kind of move towards a wrap up of all this, we'll talk segment 5. The Pac-12, Oregon can't be beaten anymore. I mean, this offense is as good as they've had since the Mariota, Chip Kelly days. They roll over Arizona, who can't stop anybody. I mean, there's that mixture in there. But I think the big one of the week, UCLA. Were they for real? Maybe not. They barely beat South Alabama. They struggle with Bowling Green. Well, then they turn around, they beat Washington, they beat Utah pretty soundly.
Right. So, yeah, man, the thing about the Pac, and especially when teams get hot, man, you talk about Oregon, and you talk about UCLA, and I guess I've been throw the Beavers in there for playing teams close, I guess. Do you get those type of awards? But you can never really know, and it sounds cliche, of course, on any given Saturday, but teams get hot, teams get a little bit of momentum, and they get this confidence, right? And the coaches get confidence in their play calling and stuff like that. Or guys can just play free, man, and they can play stress-free. And so that's where you get these UCLA teams and you get these Oregon teams that come and show up to play ball, man, and it's like they're just separating themselves from the rest of the pack. And it's not really one thing that you could put your finger on, but all 3 phases are starting to come together and play good, and that's offense, defense, special teams.
And then Washington loses again. I mean, we're talking about a program that has been pumping out defensive talent for a decade, and they can't stop anybody. I mean, UW Arizona, that might be first to 60 this week in Seattle. I mean, 45 points to Arizona State with a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, believe me, I am certainly not sad to see it. It is quite enjoyable that it's happening, but it is without question stunning to watch them give up 85 points in 2 weeks. This was a team who went years without giving up more than 35. They hadn't given up 35 was the most they'd given up, I think, over the course of 4 or 5 years up until last year's Apple Cup. And even then, well, 7 of those were defensive, so it was really only 33 points from the defense, and then 40 in back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, man, I would say that they're potentially feeling some of that Seahawk mojo, right?
I would
the
say
Hawks have been playing against teams that have pretty much been one-handed. As you talk about Detroit, they were missing a bunch of guys, right? You talk about the Saints, the certain quarterback wasn't there. They didn't really have any receivers on the field, right? But they find a way to beat the Seahawks, or the Seahawks find a way to beat themselves by not making things happen on defense. And that's what the Huskies are doing. The Huskies offense, it usually looks pretty good, but the defense, just like you said, is like a wet paper towel, man. People just running through it, and you can't win ball games like that. Playing shootout games and just letting a bunch of points go up, it doesn't take much to lose those type of games. So, I like to see it too. I like to see the guys in purple get beat up a little bit, but it's just not a good look right now.
And we'll just kind of wrap it up with a couple quick NFL Coug notes. Jalen Watson's playing right now. Again, we're doing this on Monday, and the Chiefs are up 24-23 on the Raiders. He got dinged with a PI call, but I mean, it's Devontae Adams. It's one of the best receivers in the world, and I didn't think it was PI. I think Adams initiated the contact. Abe Lucas was really solid for the Seahawks. Did yield his first career sack yesterday. Again, it's Cameron Jordan. We're talking about an all-time great, a Hall of Famer. Frankie Luvu was out with injury, so he did not play. Quick shout out to Wazoo Volleyball. Swept Oregon and Oregon State. That was a ranked Oregon team, mind you. And how about those Mariners, man? ALDS. I was in the box as they were completing that comeback in game 2, like trying to be professional and composed, but like losing my mind.
I like it. And you have to, man. It's a lot of energy, especially to come back like that, man. That's crazy.
No doubt about it. I'm gonna try and make it to one of the games next weekend if there is two, but it'll be tough. But thank you for listening to True to the Cougs with Jamey Vinnick and Marcus Trufant, brought to you by the Believe Network. Make sure to follow True to the Cougs on Instagram, Twitter, and apparently TikTok. That's a new one for me. I'll let Holden, our manager, handle that. Manager, is that fair to call Holden?
I would. I think it's fair to call him the manager. So you're not doing any TikTok dances or nothing, Jamey? Come on,
it's TikTok. I'm not. I mean, I know what it is. It's not on my phone. That is not.
Yeah.
I'm old. I am an old soul. I might only be 25, but I am old. No, I am not. I barely do Instagram. It's all Twitter for me. A little bit of Insta, but
I got
TikTok.
You.
No, that's not me.
For our first post, I think we need to do a dance, especially if you come to the West Side for a Mariners game. But let's get it set up.
We'll talk about that after the show. Actually, we'll talk about that. And then make sure to tune into CougFan.com to see all the latest updates on Washington State athletics. And as always, we will close it with a Go Cougs.
Go Cougs, baby.
Go Cougs. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.